Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Prog Report Top 5 podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm really excited about the episode we have today. For anybody that has listened and followed the website, you know that personally I am a big Train fan. And of course, I'm a fan of the new album, Grand Tour, which is out now. And really excited for the podcast we have today, which is Top 5 Big Train songs. Of course, if you've missed any back episodes or any top fives, you can check them out on progreport.com and all our podcast networks. Everything is available online. And also, please check out our playlist on Spotify, New Progressive Rock, and Prog Report Radio, which is updated all the time with new material, including stuff from the new Big Train album. So I'm very excited to have these two guys. It's rare that we get two members of a particular band to join on the podcast to discuss their own material. I don't think we've ever had this happen before on the podcast, so this should be a lot of fun. So I'd like to welcome from Big Train, Greg Spawton.
Hello.
And David Longdon.
Hello.
Thank you guys for doing this. I know you guys are busy in the promo and press for the new album, Grand Tour. As we're recording this, it's a couple of days away from release.
Yeah.
So chances are this is probably, the podcast is out and the album is out already by the time people are hearing this. I think it's another winner. It's another great, fantastic album. Before we get started with the top five, which the top five we're going to be doing is Big Train songs. So you guys can each share your favorites, and I will as well. I'd like to ask you a little bit about the album and how long did it take you to write it, and a little bit of the story. I think most people know that you went outside of English folklore for this one, but maybe talk a little about the album and how it came to be.
Sure. It took a long time to write. We're very careful and precise with our songwriting. We're not, until we're ready, nothing will come out. So I think probably the writing period, amongst other things, would probably be about a year. David, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. Greg's right. The album took a lot longer than usual to write, but I think that's because we were trying to do something a little bit different, and we were trying to not fall into the same tried and trusted progressions or arrangement things. We're very very aware of the fact that we wanted to try and do something different.
Yeah, and when you write, typically, is it story first and then you try to place the music, or because you guys are really into the stories and making sure that it's very detailed and the lyrics are very thought out, unlike most bands. So what comes first, and how much massaging goes into the story writing first before the music?
It's quite often a title that comes first, or at least an idea, and then the title follows. So I think quite a lot of the time we'll discover the stories that we're writing about when we're out and about, wandering around. Try and keep, which we're observers, I suppose. So we try and keep our eye out for things, interesting tales that have got left behind. It may be a title. It may literally just be a passing title that grabs our fancies. Once that's done, though, for me, it's normally, I'll be writing to a title, but I won't finish the lyrics until the music is kind of mostly there. The melodies may be down. I may have some sort of la melodies and stuff, but the words come at the end. They come at the beginning and at the end, in effect, because you kind of know what you're writing about and maybe what the title is. Then you write the music. Then you write the words.
On your off times, are you always reading just dozens and dozens of books and things, and you maybe come across a story and you just pin the corner of it and say, okay, I'm going to get back to this is going to make a good song a year from now, type of thing?
Yeah, we do. We do a lot of reading, do a lot of research into things. And as Greg said, usually, if you're on the lookout for these things, they kind of eventually somehow present themselves as we go about our travels and our interests. So Greg will go away or something like that, and we speak most days, and Greg will share with me what he's thinking about, and I do the same. And eventually, something starts to take shape within these conversations, and something, an idea will come together as a result of the conversations. So that's how we go about it.
Yeah, it seems really interesting, and you guys have your own really unique, specific style and sound, one that I really have grown to love. It's one of my favorite types of music. I think you guys are your own type of music. But what do you think about the sort of the sometimes there's a criticism, right? That like, well, it just sounds like Big Big Train again. You know what I mean? But should be a good thing, right? So I don't, that's sort of a weird kind of thing because you're not going to come out and start playing double bass metal. That's never going to happen with it, and nor should it, right?
Some people always want something different, I think, and quite frankly, I think our job is to ignore them.
Yeah.
I think our job is to write what satisfies us. And I think with this album, I think what I like about this album is that it's a combination of familiarity in terms of our core sound is there, but also we're reaching out for other things as well. It's got the right balance for me between experimentation and sticking to what we do best, which is a sound that is very particularly ours. So alongside maybe a song like Voyager, which is probably fairly core Big Big Train material sounding wise, you've got a song like Aerial, which is very different from anything we've done before, and I think the balance is right. I don't want us to be repeating ourselves indefinitely, or going over the same ground. But on the other hand, there is a core sound to the band, and that will evolve over time. It won't necessarily be. I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, as we say. I don't know. How do you feel, David?
Well, we do. I think we serve the songs as always. That's something that Greg and I are very passionate about. We have to also be true to ourselves. So I think when you can't be kind of like second guessing what fans want or expect, but you've only got to look at the threads on social media, and you realise they don't really know what collectively they don't know what it is that we should be doing, and nor would I expect them to inform us about that. There's no need for it. Greg and I know exactly what we want to do, and we like to experiment with different things. We like to stretch, but it's got to be in context of the band. It can't just be out of nowhere, like suddenly doing a solely electronica album. Would just be alienate our fan base. So
this isn't the right time for me to mention our new thrash metal director.
Right. the new side project.
Yeah, well, actually, that's a good point, and that's the other thing. I think there is scope for scratching other itches, songwriting itches in side projects. I mean, Nick's doing a fantastic solo album at the moment, and there are bits in there that sound a bit like Big Big Train, and maybe bits that sound a bit like Spock's Bid. It sounds, but it's at the core of what he wants to do with that particular solo album,
right?
And he's got that outlet. We've all got various outlets that we can explore and exploit. When it comes to doing Big Big Train music, we'll evolve, but I don't want to, as I say, I don't want to throw everything out that's good about us. I think that would be pointless.
No, I wouldn't change a thing. The thing that defines your guys' sound for me is, and it's been for many albums now, it's for me, it's the most consistent sound, and it's the most unique sound, is the background vocals, the harmonies. They're completely specific to what Big Big Train does. Who makes up the harmonies? How do those come together? They sound so much like you guys every time I hear it.
Well, the harmony vocals is something that we wanted to develop because we've got good singers in the band. Nick's been a lead vocalist in his time with Spock's. Rickard sings, Rachel sings. We've got that capability for doing harmony vocals. Initially, when I joined Big Big Train on the Under 4 Yard, I arranged the vocals, lead vocals and harmony vocals. That's something that I did. But as the band has progressed, and by the time we got to Grand Tour, we're starting. I mean, I'll do vocal arrangements and things like that. And but it's something that the band's keen to do. We think it's a strength. So and it's a very human sounding strength as well. It's not a guitar tone. It's not a keyboard patch. It's real people singing, against each other, and it's powerful.
Yeah, no, it is. It's really, really well done. So also we should mention that you guys will be touring, I guess next year, is it? And
Well,
talk
we're touring the UK in the autumn of this year,
right.
and then we've got two batches of touring that we're sort of booking at the moment next year, which will be an appearance at Rosfest, followed by some shows in the States and Canada, and then later in the summer we'll be going out to Italy and hopefully one or two other European destinations as well. So we've
Well,
got
that's great. We're all very excited for some US shows finally. This is one of the bands I've
yeah,
been
we are.
dying to see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no, we're
we're
looking
looking
forward to it.
forward to it. So
Yeah, that should be a lot of fun. And you have to play like a 4-hour show so we can hear all this.
okay.
So get into shape. All right. So let's get into the top five. As I explained to you guys before, and anybody that hasn't listened before, what we do is we're each going to pick our 5 favorite Big Train songs. We'll go in order. We'll each pick our number 5 and then our number 4 and so on, and talk about them and whatever comes up. Greg, why don't you go first with your number 5 choice?
Sure. So I'm going to do this chronologically. So this isn't a top 5 as in these are my 5 favourite BBT
Okay.
songs. So I'm going to go back through the Missing Time and start with the Under Full Yard album. And the reason I wanted to choose a song from there is because it was our breakthrough album as much as we've ever had one, really. It's where David joined, it's where Nick joined. So the core identity of the band began to come about. It's where we first started using the brass band. And, more importantly, I think it was where, we talked about the sound that we've got a few minutes ago, and it's where we began to define that sound with the sort of big backing vocal arrangements and the brass and the storytelling of the songs. It's kind of where it all started for me. And rather than choose, the obvious thing, the title track or Victorian Brickwork, which are 2 numbers we've played live, I've gone with a slightly deeper cut called Winchester Diver. And I think, again, this is one of those storytelling pieces of music. So it links to tracks like Brave Captain later on, where we're telling a sort of particularly English story. What I like about it is that I didn't have it's a sort of 6-minuter, and there's a chunk of instrumental at the front and the end of it, and so I didn't have very long to say what I wanted to say in it. I only had a verse and 2 verses and 2 choruses, but I think it's just one of those songs where I just feel I really nailed the lyrics. I just everything I wanted to say I was able to get down. And the other thing that came from it for me was a lesson from David, actually. It was our first album working together. And at that time, I was writing pretty complicated music. I still am sometimes. But, in this particular song, I remember I kept fiddling around with the chord sequence in the chorus. And I remember at one stage, David sort of crying out in frustration, "Look, it's a chorus, Greg, stop arsing around with the chords. This is supposed to be a memorable part of the song." And that, it kind of reconnected with me with the fact that in prog rock, the song is still the main thing. Prog can have long pieces of music, it can have long instrumental sections, but it's mainly a song-orientated genre. And so that was a useful lesson for me. I went away from that, and that has helped steer me through, through the last 10 years, really, in terms of my songwriting approach.
Much of a story to tell, just how he stopped the world from falling down, making a stand, solid ground, making a stand, solid ground, making a stand.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a beautiful song. That whole album is amazing. David, you had just joined. Did the writing already happen yet by the time you joined for that album, or you were still involved there?
Yes, the songs are all in place. they were written, and a lot of it was recorded. So when I arrived, Greg sent me some lyrics, and there were kind of demo vocals. And one thing that struck me was there were lots of vocals. It's very wordy, and I thought sometimes we're going to struggle to get these words in. So I thought it'd be easier if I could share the vocals with lead vocal parts and backing vocal parts. So you've got almost like answering phrases from the backing vocals. And so that was the thing that set it. But a big thing that that kind of influenced me during that time, I'd been listening to an album by The Sin called Indestructible. And it's the album where Steve Nardelli and also Chris Squire had reunited The Sin. And it was interesting listening to Chris Squire and how he used these harmony and counterpoint vocals throughout that album. And that was a kind of an indicator really for me to kind of think actually something like that would really work. So yeah, that's how I approached that.
Oh, that's cool to know. Nice. All right, great. Let's. What's your number 5?
Right, my number 5. I'll stop. There are no particular order really. If you ask me in half an hour's time, I'll probably give you a different set. But the first one I want to choose is something that Greg won't be surprised to hear. It's called Summer's Lease, and it's a song that was on The Difference Machine, which was the album before I joined. And I remember Rob Aubrey saying that this big train looking for a vocalist, perhaps, and I should check them out. And at that time, a magazine, Classic Rock, had been out with a progressive rock sampler CD on the cover, and the track that was on it was Summer's Lease. So it was the first track by Big Train that I'd heard, Summer's Lease. So, and when we played Lorelei last summer, we did a warm-up show in the UK at a place called the Anvil in Basingstoke, we performed Summer's Lease for the first time. Oddly enough, utilising us all singing these really tight harmonies in the middle. We had a break down in the middle of the song, which just goes to the vocal harmonies. It was really powerful. So it's my first taste of Big Train, and it was at Lorelei. So it's a great song as well. I think it's a beautiful song that we wrote to it.
Where did you come from? Where will you go to? Where did you come from? Where will you go to? Don't go away. Don't go
Well, nice. I mean, I wasn't expecting that we would go to an album that you weren't on, but that is cool. Very nice. All right, I'll jump in with my number 5. I did put mine in an order, but I equally like them all, obviously, and more than just 5. But picking 5 was hard enough. But my first choice is going to be really the first song I heard from the band. And I will say that the first album I heard was the first English Electric Part 1, and reason I checked out the band was because I was a big fan of Spock's Beard, and then I saw in some Modern Drummer poll or something that Nick DiVirgilio was listed there, but he wasn't listed there as Spock's Beard. It had Big Train under his name, and I said, well, I never even knew about this, and so I immediately somehow found the first album, checked it out, and honestly, from the first couple of minutes of the opening track, the first rebreather, I was hooked. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm blown away by this. It immediately sucked me in. Being of the classic prog bands, and I hope you don't mind this sort of subtle comparison. It's probably been said to you before, but of the sort of classic 70s original prog bands, Genesis has always been my favorite, and this immediately reminded me of that old kind of classic Genesis thing, and music like that I hadn't heard in years that was at least new. So vocally, man, you were awesome on that song. And so that the first song that sort of drew me in. And that was a period where
Thank you.
I'd always been a fan of this music, obviously. But in the States, there were, many bands that we just weren't aware of, you guys being one of them. And that album, those set of albums coming out, along with, there were a few releases from other bands like, Steven Wilson, I think had just come out with the, Raven, They Refused to Sing, and some other couple of albums, really was the reason I even started the website, because I was like, there's too much good music out here. And I'm just emailing all my friends about, you got to check out this, you got to check out this. I'm like, I'll just start a website and maybe 100 people will see it or something, So really, it was one of the albums that kick-started all this thing for me. So it's very dear to me, those first English electric albums. So First Rebreather is going to be my first choice.
Thank you. That's a good choice.
All right. So, Greg, you're number 4.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with, actually, the roots of this song go back even further than The Difference Machine. And this is a song called Swan Hunter. And this was a song I could not finish off for love nor money. And I'd been writing it. The early demo of it was probably from the late 90s. And I knew it had potential, but I just couldn't make the bits work, and I couldn't maximize that chorus again. And in fact, the working title was Anthem, because I felt it was quite anthemic, and it just kind of, at some stage, I gave up, and it sort of fell by the wayside. So when we were looking to do the English Electric albums, it became clear that we were doing, in effect, 2 albums, so I started to look around thinking, is there anything here that's not finished off, that has potential? And I came upon Swan Hunter, which I don't think it had a title. Did it have a title? It may have had the title Swan Hunter. I can't remember. So I kind of worked out what it was probably going to be about. But I just, this was a question of calling in songwriting rescue, really. I needed some input from others to finish this off. So I spoke to David and said, look, have a listen to this and see what you think. And he was able to come at it with a sort of fresh set of ears, and made it the song that it is today. And I like the song. I think we both like the song very much. It's quite an emotive subject. It's kind of a father-son song set against the background of the sort of fading industrial communities in England, and that kind of, it resonates across the world. We've had comments from all across the world where the same issues have happened, where industries have faded and died, and communities have sort of struggled subsequently. So it's I like the subject matter. And the other thing that was nice for me was, having struggled with this piece of music in the 90s, we finally played it live in 2017. And I think it went down really well. It was a really strong live number as well. So it was just nice to kind of, almost 20 years to see that kind of the story of this song play out, and finally, reach that end stage when we were able to sort of debut it in the live performance.
Call me up, boy. Sit you down by the fireside, spend some time. All the pride, boy, and the tears enough to fill the time.
Yeah, I love that one. And live, the last live release, the Merchants of Light, man, David, the performance on that is just awesome.
Thank you.
Really just.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, it's not. What's nice is, I mean, there's a lovely falsetto vocal, sort of soul bit of vocal singing on the album version, and David absolutely nails that live, and it's the sort of moment where the audience kind of just immediately connects, and I think there's a live film on YouTube where you can sort of see that and hear that with the audience. So from me, I'm just stood at the back of the stage playing bass pedals at that stage, so it's kind of nice to kind of look out and to think, wow, we're touching people here. You can see and hear the direct connection, which is the best bit of playing live, when you get that immediate feedback and see that something that's been written and performed connects, with the
that's one of those where I found myself even just clapping in my own house. Like, this is great. But, all right, David, you're number 4.
Okay, it's interesting that Greg should choose Swan Hunter, and the relationship between fathers and sons, and relationships between fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, mothers and sons, all that kind of business. They're quite common ground within Big Train material. It's so important to our lives. Both Greg and I, we've got children, and the idea of carrying something on. In Swan Hunter, it talks about we carry it down, pass it on down to the next generation, and of course that would have eventually fueled some of the idea of folklore as well, when coming onto that record, where the idea of literally culturally we pass things down from generation to generation. But this is also the next track I'm going to choose is from an EP that we did, which the EP was called Far Skies Deep Time, and it was at that point we'd had some great reviews for the Under 4 Yard, and we were feeling confident about it. We thought, wow, we've done something that's struck a really good chord here, and we can go off and make some more interesting music. We were feeling quite empowered with good reviews from the Under 4 Yard. Greg had written a piece of music, and it was got a working title of Brambling. And brambling is pretty much when you go in the sort of along the English hedgerows, and you get the wild berries growing in the hedgerows and things like that, and you can pick them and do it. So my next track's the next track I've chosen is called Brambling, but it's also about this rite of passage. It's about first love. It's about it's the idea of young people meeting and falling in love for the first time. So there's all that heady summer berries, eating berries fresh from the hedgerows, and that kind of thing, and meeting people that we fall in love with. And there's also it's part of the like sexual awakening as well in people. Suddenly these emotions kind of swell up. And it's also the idea as well that when these love affairs come to an end, and how heartbroken that is, but it's the heartbreak that you need in order to make you grow in emotional maturity. And I like this one. Greg said to me, he got the working title of Brambling. We kept the title because I think it was a good song, and I just wrote a song. So we were talking about, I think at that time one of Greg's children were about to fly the nest and all that kind of thing, and had embarked on a relationship. So all that was very much in the environment. So I wrote this thing, the lyric, and I was really flattered with this piece of criticism that it received on one forum, where somebody compared it to Lawrencean, he called it, in the sense of D.H. Lawrence, similar sorts of themes, and that's fine by me, because where I come from, D.H. Lawrence is a local boy, so that was good. So Brambling, that's my 4th choice.
She will always be the first, and so you'll never forget. She is a thorn to pierce your tender heart.
that EP. This isn't on my top five, but since you brought up the EP, I always was curious how you guys stumbled upon the redoing the Master of Time track from because that's an Anthony Phillips B-side, right? How did that come about?
I can't remember why why that came about. I think we had a little interregnum whilst we were writing the English Electric album, so we had a bit of time, and we thought, let's put an EP together, and so we sort of finished these co-written tracks that we had, Wide Open Sea and Brambling, etc. And I don't know, I for some reason I'd heard this demo on an Anthony Phillips album. It was an unfinished song. It never made it from demo through to the final stage, and it just appealed to me. I just thought, actually, this is one of those songs that needs or would benefit from a proper full band treatment.
Yeah.
In the end, I mean, it wasn't padding the EP out, because the EP ended up as being over 40 minutes long, so it's probably the longest EP ever written. But it just turned out really well, and so we let our hair down a bit on it with some long soloing and
I love that version. It's really
it's a cool
really,
little
really good.
cool little thing, actually, and we've certainly, Anthony has been in touch with David fairly recently, actually, and said how much he likes our version. So it's nice that the original writer has, we've got the sort of stamp of approval from Anthony on that.
Yeah,
one.
that's really cool. Okay, I'm gonna jump in my number 4. When I was coming up with my list, I sort of noticed the trend, but we'll see. I normally go for like the big epics, and I tend to like that kind of stuff, the long songs with the many solos and that kind of thing. But I'm going to go a different route for this one, just because this song just always it gets me going whenever I listen to it. And I love the live version even is great. So it's the title track from Folklore, which I just love. I mean, I think it totally just rocks. The ending, the last couple of minutes, kind of has that flute line going, and you guys start soloing, and it has this whole it just really picks up a lot, and I just love that part. And it's sort of, for you guys, kind of like a real sort of driving kind of rock song, which I dig. When I heard it live, and even more, again on the Merchants of Light, it has sort of get up and stomp your feet kind of number, which is not something you guys are generally known for, but I love that song. So that's my number 4. What's the story there, and how did that song sort of come about?
Folklore. It was we decided that we were going to make a record. We'd been working on a project which didn't come to fruition, and that was mainly due to the success of the group. We thought that we needed, after the English Electric records, we needed an album. We needed an album that we could make quickly and do it, rather than making an extended concept album, which was the initial idea for the follow-up to those records. So we ended with Folklore. Greg and I, again, on our many phone calls or Skype calls, not Skype, but we used FaceTime, we decided that we were messing around with one or two kind of ideas. Then the idea of Folklore came up, and then we decided that's going to be the name of the album. So the themes of the album kind of fell into place around it. So that's how it came to be. And Folklore itself was just it's about rhythm, that dum ga da dum ga ga dum ga in the verses. That it's almost like a sort of an Arabic type thing, this Eastern sounding rhythm going. And
It has that call back response thing with the background
exactly.
vocals that you were talking about too, right?
It does, yeah. It's the over. In my head when I was writing it, I could imagine me going, "Let us believe," da 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 da, and then they go, "Hey ho," da, 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 and that's kind of came to pass. So by this point, we'd done the first gigs, you see. So we kind of got a grip on what it was that the audience liked and what kind of they could do and what they were up for doing. And we needed songs that had that audience participation thing, which again, as you say, we're not really known for that kind of thing, or weren't really known for that kind of thing. And so a lot of my tasks around this kind of era was write things like Wassail. It's very much written for the live stage. Folklore, it's a call to arms. It's a rallying thing. You know, it's that was it.
Right.
So that's how that came to be.
Nice, love it. All right, Greg, you're number 3.
So I'm actually sticking with the Folklore album. I'm going to choose a song. I think we released a lot of music in a short period of time with Folklore and then Grimm's Pound. And I think the only problem with that was a couple of songs fell by the wayside a little bit that didn't get the attention that I feel they deserved. So I just wanted to drop this one in here. It's a song called Winky.
I love Winky.
Yeah, it's it's another storytelling song. It's it's a true story, which David, I'm not sure how David discovered it, but it's a true story. It's very dramatic musical backdrop. I haven't listened to it for years, and I listened to it the other day when I was just working out what songs I was going to choose, and I just had a huge smile on my face at the end of it. It's a real, I'd call it a sort of prog rock romp, really. It sort of romps around. It's quite complicated. It's quite tricky, but it's got some great tunes in there as well. So I just wanted to, grab an album track here that doesn't often get mentioned and just, bring it out into the daylight a little bit. So my third choice is Winky.
Rescue search, but it's a hopeless task. With no coordinates, the search area is just too vast. They must wait and pray. The crew have one hope to survive. God speak me with you.
Yeah, actually, that was a close call for me between Folklore and Winky. I love that song, and it's really like its own tiny movie when you're listening to it. You're captivated by the entire story. You can easily follow it and understand what's going on. And at the end, you're sort of like happy, the mission was saved. It's like,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's really like an accomplishment.
I think that, one of the most important things in what we do as a band is to try to give those moments in songs where the hairs can stand up on the back of your neck. And for me, Winky's got that moment where, it all comes to a happy ending in effect. And so it just covers a lot of ground. It does it in 8 minutes rather than 18 minutes. It's complex. It's interesting. It's got a lot of energy to it, and I think it's a shame that it not every song will get the attention it necessarily deserves, and so I'd like people to have another listen to Winky.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Okay, David, number 3.
Okay, again in no particular order, but it seems that Greg and I are on Folklore as we're speaking. So I'm going to go for a song of Greg's. I think it's a fantastic song, and we performed this live at both our shows last year and the previous summer. And it's Transit of Venus Across the Sun. I just think it's a real moment, and it's about Sir Patrick Moore. He's kind of based on Sir Patrick Moore and how he lost the love of his life, and he never really re-engaged again with anyone, kind of romantically, I guess, after that point. So as far as we know, anyway. But it's a lovely idea. And when we play it, and we've got a movie of the burning sun behind us with the dots going in front of the sun, it's just a real moment. And we hit the we hit the Latin section where it goes into the topography of features of the planet Venus, and the brass band introducing it, and it's a real moment. It sounds heroic, and beautiful, and I think it's an amazing piece of work.
Set a course for the stars, reaching out for the far things, taking flight to the distance, never meaning to return. Alpha Regio, Terra, Pizza Regio, Tofer, Agrippina Mio, Alpha Regio, Terra, Pizza Regio, Tofer, Agrippina Mio.
Yeah, the horn section, especially where you're talking about, is really dramatic, and that's something you guys incorporate really well into a lot of songs. Is there a challenge when you're going to do these live performances, because you do bring on a whole horn section and sort of arranging all of that live? Does that become sort of a challenge?
Well, it's just because the parts are arranged, and so it's just the challenge is that it's part of our sound, really, Roy. So we've got to do it right. We've got to represent ourselves in the way that it should be. So we in many ways we have sort of made a rod for our back, in the sense that yes, it's expensive to move all these people around the place, but it's part of big train. It's what we do, and the audiences expect it when we're doing gigs. Promoters saying, you must bring the brass with you, you must bring, all that kind of thing. So it's expected.
Every festival promoter that talks to us says exactly that. You've got to bring the brass. So it's kind of become, it's become a sort of a key part of our identity musically, and certainly in the live arena. And it's great to have the guys around. They're most of them are army band members or former army band members, so they're really good fun chaps. They're a real part of the team. And Dave Desmond, the trombonist who arranges the parts, he's a really skillful arranger. It's great chucking these ideas at him. Sometimes they're fairly well developed, like the bit on Folklore, da, 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 that was kind of fairly well scored. But other times it's like, Dave, is a kind of melody here, and can you make something of this? And he'll then go away and score it really beautifully. So he's very gifted, I think, Dave Desmond, and it's brilliant. It's just such a part of what we do these
Have
days.
you thought about are they coming to the US, the brass section? Are you doing that?
So at Rosfest said you must bring the brass. So what we need to. We do need to be economical here, not with the truth, but with the cost or the economics of touring.
Yeah, sure.
So what we will have the brass band with us, but it's quite likely we'll maybe just bring Dave and hire some local players. And the brass scene in America is astounding.
Right.
The only thing you guys get wrong is you call it horn, where it's brass. So but apart from that, the level of the players is just brilliant, and so there's no concern for us. It'd be a shame not to have all the guys around, when we're traveling outside of Europe, and as much as we can, we'll have the usual team. But we just need to be realistic about
people. It's a challenge. Listen, it's a challenge for a band of just four guys. In many cases, to come from Europe over here to play, it's tough, and we're getting more and more bands here. There seems to be more of an interest in prog bands coming to the States, which is great. So hopefully that continues to improve.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to jump in. My number 3. So like I said, there's a little bit of a trend. I keep picking the opening track of albums. I don't know why that is. But so I'm going to go to Grimsbound for my third one, and Brave Captain, which another track that just from the first listen just blew me away. That whenever you guys go like super epic, that's awesome. It's done perfectly. And so Brave Captain, there's sort of a part sort of in the sort of middle to the end section where it really kind of elevates, and that's just some of my favorite stuff that you guys do. And again, it's another really cool story that you can follow and listen. I'm not always a deep lyric guy, but when you start listening to some of these songs, you're like, oh, what did he say there? I'm trying to follow it. Then you go and you actually try to read the words, and it really kind of sucks you in. And I find that doesn't happen to me with a lot of bands, but in particular, you guys have a way of doing that.
Sunshine through the leaves back in 73 with my parents, and we were eating ice cream in the shade of the old trees. I asked who was he, my dad said to me, although he was only 20, he was a hero who died for his country. Well, you should have seen me. Who would believe me now? I'm racing around the castle grounds. Wild imagination in full flight. My arms stretched wide, I'll be a brave captain of the skies.
Where'd you find the story for Brave Captain in writing that one?
Well, I'm a Nottingham boy, and Captain Albert Ball is a famous World War One air pilot, air ace actually. He was a hero, and he came from Nottingham. And there's a statue of him in the Nottingham Castle grounds. The sleeve notes to Grimspound on the album will kind of disclose all of that kind of thing. But it's where it came from. So the idea of Brave Captain really came from. I remember being a boy in the castle grounds. It's a hot day. I remember that because I remember eating an ice cream. I was with my mum and dad, and my dad was in the RAF, the Royal Air Force, and I remember looking at the impressive statue of Albert, who's, at that time he's got his leathers on and incredible looking, kind of iconic, heroic image. And I wanted to know who he was. And my dad told me who he was. And he explained that he'd died for his country in the war and things like that. And so there's this strange relationship, this triangulation going on between Captain Albert Ball, the statue of Captain Albert Ball, me as a young boy with an ice cream, and my dad is also in the RAF. So that's it. It's the human relationship. Yeah. It's not just the subject matter. It's how people. That's how we relate to these things. Why they strike chords in us, and that's what Brave Captain's about. But Captain Albert Ball was an interesting man. And he's also there's one line and it says this weapon had a conscience. He wasn't just a cold-blooded killer. I think one of the Captain Albert Ball quotes that get to me is he said, "It's a question of either them or me, and if it's either them or me, it will be them, not me." And that's the way he viewed it. But interestingly enough, after we played Cadogan Hall and we played Brave Captain, we're lucky enough to have a descendant of Captain Albert Ball, a gentleman called Dean Page, who came along, and he said, thank you for writing the song about my ancestor. And that was a great thing.
Yeah, I'm sure he never thought that would come to be from any band. So that's definitely cool. But you're right. The part where you're talking about, I didn't know that was you, but about the kid with his dad and trying to find out about the story. It brilliantly paints the picture of the scene and what's going on there. It's awesome.
We always try to make the emotional connection. Both Greg and I do that with our writing. There's always a human element, a strong human emotional element to the story, a strong human emotional connection.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay, Greg, number 2.
So I'm going to go. My last 2 choices are from the new album, the Grand Tour album. This is a song called Florentine. I choose this because for me it's just a classic album track. It's a really strong piece of writing, and if someone said, who doesn't know anything about Big Big Train, point me in the direction of a song, very likely it'd be this one that I would point them at, because I think it speaks very well of what the band does. The other thing I like about it is it's a great example of collaborative work across the band. So whilst the song was written by David, there's a lot of character in it from the other musicians, a lot of vocal presence from Nick, for example. But also there was this issue we had with, David left some space for a solo. And I'm not sure whether that was going to be a guitar or a keyboard solo. And in fact, what happened is Rickard sort of nipped in first and turned in this really, really beautiful lyrical guitar solo there. So Danny was left a little bit crestfallen because he was, kind of thinking, well, I wanted a solo in the song. But he just improvised a piece over the same passage. And, in effect, what we were able to do then was to accommodate both solos because they were both really strong pieces of work. And I think, the other thing that I like about this tune, as well as it being a good example of collaborative working, is that it shows the benefit of, not being afraid to sort of stretch your wings a bit. That's the benefit of prog rock, if you like, that you're not held back by a conventional song format. We're not worried about it having to be 4 or 3 minutes long or whatever. If it sounds better longer, then it will be longer. And this piece does sound better longer. It just has, the flow for me became, just felt, it didn't feel rushed before, but it just feels just more comfortable with itself. So it's a great decision. It's David's decision to incorporate both of them. Great bit of writing, good performances from the band. Yeah, it's a good song.
Your notes, fine drawings and designs are bound in codices, voyaging through time. You are a guiding light, a star, burning brightly, voyaging through time. To know where shadows are and light is not. Burn brightly, you start.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites from the new album as well. I think it's great, and I will say I don't have any songs from the new album on my top 5, but simply only it's because it's just a couple months old. That's, for me, that's the thing. But I haven't decided. Certainly, many of them are my favorite. I don't know which one I would pick if I had to pick yet. It's not there yet. But I love the album. I actually want to ask you about one track in particular because
Yeah, sure.
I've been reading a lot of reviews of people writing about the new record, and one of the songs that gets a lot of attention is the instrumental Pantheon, which happens to be a Nick DiVirgilio track. So I'm curious about how that one happened. Did he write it off completely and just present it one day, or did someone ask for it, or what happens there like that?
It was a pure bit of Nick DiVirgilio songwriting. I think Nick's been looking to join the songwriting team for quite some time. In fact, this is actually probably the oldest song on the album, or piece of music, because we had it a couple of years ago, and it was being, in fact, it was set aside for a concept album that never quite got finished off. And so Nick's been very patient with us on this, because we it had lost its home, if you like, but we wanted to save it for the right piece of work, the right album. We didn't just want to give it away on a B-side of a single or something.
Yeah, no, it fits really well there.
Yeah, it's a great piece of music. It's complicated. It's urgent. It's got the brass again coming in and giving it sort of almost a James Bond kind of feel at times. But no, it's great, and that's the cool thing now. Pretty much everybody in the band is submitting songs, and it means that it sort of enriches the brew that we've got, if you see what I mean. We can do. I don't think I could write something like Pantheon, to be honest. But Nick can, because he's got a bit more of a fusion background, and he can put these sort of things together.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, David, you're number 2.
Okay, I'm going to pick, like Greg's done, really. I've decided to go for some things off of Grand Tour rather than just concentrating on just old material. So I've gone for every good story has an ending, and I've decided for my second choice, well, not second choice, my penultimate track. I've gone for Home Song, and I think it's a really strong way to finish off an album. It's a very positive uh, way of finishing off the album. I know when I've been abroad when I was younger, spent quite a lot of time in France. When every turn from France, I always, even with regards to what I'd have seen when I was abroad, when I came back, I always saw my home in a very different way. It wasn't only all the familiar surroundings and comforts of home. There was something had kind of changed, but of course, nothing really changed about home. Something had changed in me, and I think in this track, after we've been on our travels throughout the album, we've been into space and all the kind of whatever we're doing. It's a great song. It's we all have the need to come home, and I think Greg captures this beautifully.
Voyages are ended, journeys done. Comes over one, the need to get back home. The riverbank is firm beneath your feet. Follow it upstream to where the headwaters flow.
I love that one too. That's one that has it really has two completely different parts to it, right? The first half is almost has kind of a Latin groove to it once the drums come in, and then the ending becomes that big train, epic, soaring kind of orchestral ending, which you guys do so well. So
Yeah,
it's a great way to
yes,
close the album.
that's exactly right. And in fact, I'm going to skip ahead and do my final choice because my final choice was Home Song. So
Okay.
we didn't compare. We didn't compare notes. In fact, we've done quite well so far, actually. Not to
No, it's great. I like
double
not
up,
knowing in
but
advance. It's great.
when David said, "Oh, every story needs an ending," I thought, "Oh no, he's picked Home Song." So yeah, it was the reason I picked it. I do think it's a nice ending to the album. But the reason I picked it was because, and David will know this very well. Sometimes you have a vision for a song, and at some stage along the way, it doesn't quite end up as you wanted it to, or expected it to, or hoped it to. And it might be that it ends up better. It might be that it ends up not quite as good. But for whatever reason, it doesn't quite end up as you hoped. Now, Home Song is an example of the opposite of that, where everything I heard in my head and got onto the demo then came true as the band got their fingers on it. I deliberately, in writing it, I wanted this kind of fairly sprightly up tempo beginning, and then I could hear it ending with this sort of fairly big, powerful brass section. And I wanted some cool guitar licks in there, and I wanted the vocal to be very emotive at the end. And that kind of all came to part. As I was watching people recording their bits and bobs, it all, when the brass was down, I think, yeah, Dave's really nailed the arrangement there. The drums are great, and the violin, and everything's there. And then towards the end of the recording, Dave was putting his guitar down, and that was really stellar bit of guitar playing. And then I was there when David did the vocal parts, and again I could feel the hairs going up on the back of my neck as they were going down. So it's just one of those songs that just has survived the process of songwriting, I suppose. And I'm really, if someone said to me, just tell me one song that you're proud of, I think at the moment it'd be this one. I'm a bit of a home bird. I'm very fixated by the natural landscape and wildlife, and I've tried to capture the essence of all of those things in the song and in the lyrics. So yeah, it turned out it turned out well, and I'm very, very proud and very pleased that David also, also touches him too. That's good.
Yeah, and you're right, because it encompasses a lot of what you guys do in just 5 minutes, which is not always.
That's a really good point.
Something that can be achieved,
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we've this. Those that are complaining that we're mining the same ground, I suppose, we'll point to Home Song as an example. But I think maybe when I look at a song like Home Song, I'm thinking maybe of Victorian Brickwork or Hedgerow, that sort of piece that we've done before. It's from the same stable, but I think what you say is very true. It's done and dusted in 5 minutes. It didn't need to be any longer than it was. It successfully sort of speaks of what needed to be said in that period of time. It's
a brilliant piece of music.
Thank you.
All right, so David, hold on to your number one. We'll take turns. I'll do so. My number two. Tough call to not have this number one, but my number one to me was always fairly obvious, and I'll get to that. But my number two is Under Fall Yard, the title track from that album, The Long Epic.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't come as a surprise. I'm sure you get a lot of people think that's their favorite song or one of the most endearing songs from the group, right? It's got to be.
It gets mentioned a lot. Yeah.
And I mean, look, that is one of the best 20+ minute songs that there is. It covers so much musical ground, and the again, just the epic nature of the sort of the reintroduction of the chorus and the main themes when they come towards the end. It's just so powerful and massive. And simply, I mean, that opening guitar riff in itself is just so cool. Who wrote that guitar part, Greg? Is that one of your things?
It was actually, yeah. The song was influenced by a number of things, but by a track by Steve Hillage, the title of which escapes me. I think it might be Fish Rising, or the album's called Fish Rising. And it just had this kind of lovely sort of lugubrious kind of guitar phrase on it, or electric guitar arpeggio sort of riff, and that kind of idea influenced the sort of 12-string riff that is at the core of the song, or the early stages of the song, and the little bit at the start of it that preempts that was just something that was on the original demo as well. So obviously it was performed by Dave Gregory on the album, but it was maybe me actually, I can't remember now. But yeah, it was one of my things. And yeah, it's nice that's it's 10 years old now, that song, and it's good that people still enjoy it. We've played it live a few times now, and I think whilst it's 20 minutes or so long, it doesn't outstay its welcome. For me, there's a lot going on in there, and it does have a satisfactory ending. It gets to a place that is quite moving, and it was a good on the one of the best things about recording that album was hearing David singing the end section, because there was no vocals on the end section originally, the very end of it, and he just was improvising these lines from earlier. And I think it was then that I was thinking, Christ, this guy he's just really fantastic at what he does.
Yeah. The ending lines were, I mean, they're just so awesome.
Very moving. Yeah, I mean, it really, and then then you get Dave Gregory coming in with some lovely guitar licks as well. It really, again, it was a good example of that collaborative working, taking the song up several notches for me. So yeah, thank you for choosing one of our long pieces.
These are all places stood in the way. Haunting the land with the mark of life. You
right, so you your number one then would be Home Song, which we covered, and David will jump to your number one choice.
Okay, I'm going to go for it's going to be another Greg song because I feel a bit. I don't really particularly like choosing my own material because you know, I'm going to go for Voyager because it needs to be said. It's on Grand Tour, and it's coming towards the twilight of the album, if you like. It's an epic song. It's about the Voyager space missions, and which was something. Greg and I are both the same age. We were both born in 1965, and so we were born in the same year. And to us at that time, it was all very exciting stuff, seeing these missions going off into space. And I'm sure Greg will tell you a little bit more about it in a moment. But it was it's a stirring piece of music. It's the first time we've done we recorded strings in Abbey Road Studio 2, and you can hear those strings in towards the closing sections of Voyager, and it's a really stirring thing when it happens. You know, you can hear the acoustic signature of that incredibly significant and important recording environment. And you can it's great to hear that on a piece of big music. I think it works right. It's very stirring and otherworldly and real lump in the throat stuff. It's cut from the same cloth as things like Greg's East Coast Racer and Brooklyn's from Folklore, and you can hear that lineage as it moves along. It's a great piece of work, and it's a climactic moment as we draw to the close of the Grand Tour.
Measuring the shadows, guided by the stars and sounding waves. Track the arrow flight of birds to read the signs that distant trace. Men changed into standing stones, and water turned to ice. Where the sun has gone to rest, a wilderness, an emptiness. Heading further out toward the distant shoreline to reach the source of a river. Mountains of the moon, beyond the next headland, over the far horizon, out under the open skies. See how far we've come.
Yeah, again, another awesome track. I mean, the whole new album is full of amazing stuff. But the ending, the last couple of songs together from Voyager down the Home Song is probably my favorite part of the album as you get to the closing moments, those two songs together. So I'm glad those got some mentions. Nice you put that on there. And again, the new album, by the time everyone hears this, it is out. So get it, listen to it. It's awesome. All right, so I'm going to jump into my number one choice, and it's another opening track. So I think 4 out of my 5 choices are opening track. Look, I'm going to go on record and say, not only is this my favorite song by you guys, it is one of my favorite songs ever, and you have to play it live when you come here. I'm demanding. So. And I think you probably would, but anyway, it's East Coast Racer from English Electric 2, and or from Full Power, either way. I just think the second half of it is one of my favorite pieces of music. It's up there with, the instrumental section from Cinema Show and things like that for me. So I think it's just awesome when that extra sort of, I'm going to guess it's like a Moog or something comes in. The second half of the sort of ending part, it just gives me goosebumps every time. And I've seen you guys perform it live on videos and stuff, and it's just awesome. So absolutely just a jaw-dropping track for me, and one that I still listen to all the time. And I think you guys, you've played it live in most shows, and it seems to be sort of a big crowd pleaser. Do you sort of sense the same idea when you play it live from the audience about that song?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we are going to have to put it to bed at some stage, but it probably will be in the live set for a little bit longer. Yeah, it does feel it's a real it's a blast to play. It really is. I mean, I remember a lot of the energy in it is down to Nick. He really gets that kind of, when the sort of second section gets going and we're sort of motoring towards the later stages. It's that ability that he's got to groove in odd time signatures. That it's so important. I hear so many drummers that can play odd time signatures but don't groove in them. And what Nick does, because he's got that sort of Tony Williams, Phil Collins kind of upbringing, he's got groove. And so, and I've got a little bit of video. I'll share it at some stage where we were recording the drums in the studio, and he'd whizzed through it 3 or 4 times, and I just said, that's it. We've got enough. And he just said, hey, it's really cool to play. I'm happy to do a couple more takes. Because he was just enjoying that sort of groove, really. And yeah, it's a moment. I mean, I love playing it live. I love the fact that David stays on stage for the instrumental section, because he clearly, I can see that he's enjoying the music and getting in with the groove. And there's a nice bit of video footage where the kind of big Mellotron moments coming up, and you can just see.
That's what I meant, Mellotron.
Yeah. There's a big Tron intervention in the song, and you can kind of see. There's a bit where you just see this David from the side before it happens, and there's on YouTube, and you can just see a little smile on his face, because I think he's just knows that's sort of coming, and so it's good. It's good fun. I'm glad that song's made the cut.
Awesome. Well, guys, this was a blast. I think you guys are just riding an amazing wave right now, and I'm really happy for the success. I'm happy to get to know you guys, and
thank you.
Be able to talk about some of this music and help spread the word, and
we'll meet you next year. Look forward to meeting you next year.
Yeah, that's going to be really exciting. I can't wait for that. And actually, now that Rossfest is now down here in Florida, which is a lot easier for me, which is great. So that's where I'm at.
And we hear it's it's a lovely town, and so we're looking forward to it. Should be good.
Yeah. All right. And again, everybody, the new album Grand Tour is available now, and check the websites and Facebook and all that kind of stuff for tour dates. If you're around Europe, UK area, and next year in the States, we'll find out more dates as time comes. And again, thanks, guys. We'll be in touch soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Roy.
All right, bye.
Bye.